Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento, and I know I always say that I'm excited for our episodes and our guests, but today I'm already extraordinarily excited, and we haven't even gotten into this guy's zone of genius just yet, but I do want to introduce you to today's guest. His name is Steven Custer. He's a really interesting guy with an incredible background. I think he's going to blow you away with some of his insights here today. I think he's going to reshape the way that you view your own business and your own marketing. Steven is the owner of Dry Humor Marketing and an award-winning puppeteer. For sure, I'm going to ask him about that. Don't worry. With experience in the corporate world, nonprofits, and government, he brings a wide range of experience and creative ideas to the world of marketing consulting. He loves to help businesses and nonprofit organizations figure out why they do what they do. And I'm going to add here, because I'm for sure going to ask Steven about how to explain what we do, because that's such a hot topic for entrepreneurs. Then he uses video and photography to help them tell their stories. He usually adds a dash of humor to those stories, and he seems to think he's hilarious. We're going to verify that for ourselves today, and he always says that's unconfirmed by independent scientific inquiries. So it's up to us today. I'm so excited to introduce my interview today with Steven Custer. All right, Steven, welcome to the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Hello, Brian. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate all the kind words that you said about me already, so I'll try and live up to them.
Heck yeah. Well, you've got a lot to live up to, Steven, because I said to you before we even hit record, you're one of the most interesting people that I've talked to in, 6 years now of doing this show. Where do we start? I think we have to start with the puppeteer thing. I need to know more about who is Steven as a guy.
Yeah, my most recent job before starting my business was with the transit agency here in Salem, Oregon. It's called Chariots. We're the Cherry City, and Chariots is a mode of transportation, so we misspelled Chariots, and that's our bus system. And so it's already a little bit cheeky and fun, and so I did digital marketing for them for 5 years. And we were putting together a video about sharing the road between cyclists, walkers, and drivers, and how to do that safely. And that's kind of a dry topic, and so we decided to make it a little bit funny. My coworker and business partner, Roxanne Belts, is very talented in many, many artistic endeavors, and she built a puppet, and it was a Muppet-level puppet. And she said, well, who are we going to get to voice this thing? And who even has puppeteering experience? And I slowly raised my hand and I said, I'll do it. And so we shot a video doing safety tips for cyclists, walkers, and drivers with Jabber, who ended up being the name of our puppet. And I had a great time voicing him and acting in that video, and it won an award with the American Public Transportation Association. And so it was a great time.
That's very cool. And the thing that I like is you said it right up front, a somewhat dry topic, and you injected what I view as marketing into it. And you already have pointed out to us that marketing can and perhaps should incorporate humor. Talk to us about the combination. How the heck did you even frame your entire view and your perspective on marketing? And what's humor's role in all of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think marketing should be fun. Marketing is really quite simple, as complex as people want to make it. It's just telling people about what you're doing and doing it in a way that they hear it. And, I looked at the past marketing campaigns and advertisements that I enjoyed and remembered, and there was humor, and there was also authenticity and a good story. And so we can talk about that later, but humor is a huge piece of really good marketing and advertising. So that's how I came up with the name of my company, Dry Humor Marketing. People tell me I have a dry sense of humor, which I take to mean that I think I'm smarter than the next guy and my jokes aren't very funny. But I try to inject humor where it's appropriate. That video was a good example of one. But even when we're telling an authentic story, like I've done some work with nonprofits, there are moments where we can inject some levity and some humor, and it personalizes it, and it's a good hook for people that they remember it, and it causes them to take action, which is the whole point of the marketing, right? The call to action at the end.
Yeah, and it's funny. So for me, I love my job, Steven. You rival me with one of the best home studios I've ever seen. So I absolutely love your setup. But I think that we've got different roles here today. For me, I'm just listening to your insights and your brilliance through the ears of a listener who's wondering about their own businesses. And so hearing you talk about this as a wantrepreneur or as an entrepreneur, I can't help but think to myself, well, Steven, you've already mentioned humor. You've already mentioned stories. In the bio, I talked about you helping businesses figure out why they do what they do. I don't feel like I have any stories. I don't feel like any of that stuff. Where do you even start when it comes to these big, grand marketing questions?
Yeah, I actually start with something simple that I take from the nonprofit world. I think every organization and even for-profit business should have a mission statement, a vision statement, and core values. I talk to so many different business leaders that they have all these great ideas, or in the nonprofit world, they want to save the world and do all these great things, but there's a limited amount of time, there's a limited amount of funds, and you need to have tracks to run on. And so if you have a mission statement, that's going to help you commit to something, commit to what you are good at and what you can actually do. And it also tells you what you shouldn't be doing, and keeps you from scope creep, right? With your business, even not just on a project, but with your whole business. And a vision is the way you want to see the world as a result of your work. And so you want to have an idealized goal that you're shooting for. And then your core values are things that you're not going to negotiate about. And so you commit to those things. And then the secret to marketing is you just have to tell those things, your mission, your vision, and your core values, over and over and over in new and creative ways, so that your clients or your customers or your donors will hear it and understand it, and again, take action. So there's a lot of strategy behind. I'm kind of a data geek and nerd when it comes to planning and being really strategic. But then once you have that core message, figure out how to have fun with it. One of the ways that I inject humor into a marketing message is to take, the classic, what's the problem that I'm trying to solve with my business, and what's the solution? Okay, that's your basic message. But let's take the problem and exaggerate it. You can think of 100 examples where this has been done in advertising. Exaggerate that problem to comical proportions, and then exaggerate even your solution. Keep it real, keep it authentic. It's a real solution that you're offering through your product or your service, but exaggerate it to comic proportions. And you can have a lot of fun with that and tell some fun stories, and there's some great visuals with a lot of that as well. But marketing should be fun. If it's not fun, then give me a call. I'll help you out with that.
Yeah, and I just want to point out for listeners there that I hope you caught in Steven's answer right there that what he said was, when you figure out your mission, when you figure out your vision and your core values, then your mission as a marketer then becomes to tell those things in different ways. I always hear entrepreneurs saying, I don't know what content to create. I've run out of content ideas. Steven's telling you it's the same message. It's the same things you stand for. You just tell it in different ways. You never know what's going to resonate. Steven, I always love going into real life examples here on the podcast. So I definitely would love to invite you to share with us a real life marketing campaign that you really love. But knowing the cool work that you do, I've obviously checked out your website and your work at length. And so I do want to ask you kind of a boring question for those listeners who are out there saying, well, Steven, I do social media for small businesses, or Steven, I build websites for businesses. How am I going to make that cool and fun?
Yeah, excuse me. It doesn't always have to be fun or funny. Clear communication is always the goal. The humor is the layer of frosting on top, really. And so when I build a website, I am thinking about the user. And so that applies to the humor as well. We don't want to do humor specific. I don't do a lot of pop culture jokes that won't be funny in a couple of years. Those are fun, but I like to do broad, simple, clean humor that everybody gets. The kids can watch it, and that sort of thing will resonate. But it's always on top of clear communication and thinking about the end user, the end customer. So when I was at Chariots, I designed their new website, their public website, and I redesigned what had been in the project when I started. There was a different team on it, and they hadn't thought through, what do our writers actually use the website for? They were thinking, well, maybe we'll put the board members on the homepage. Nobody cares about the board members. Sorry, board members, I love you guys. But nobody cares about the board members when they want to know what time my bus is going to get here, how do I get where I'm going, and how much is it going to cost? And so I redesigned the homepage and said, those are going to be the key things right on the homepage. And I heard time and time again, hey, I can find stuff. I know where it is. We had auditors. We had a lot of auditors come in because of the Federal Transportation Administration rules. And they would come in and they say, hey, we can find the information we're looking for. And so it's always the customer in mind, keeping what they need, what they want, how they understand what you're doing, and then tailoring it to that. It's boring, but it works.
Yeah, and we say that it's boring, but to me, so far already, obviously we're just talking about the strategy stuff. We're going to dive into so many other topics that I can't wait to pick your brain on. But what I'm hearing from you already, Stephen, is it's a blend of us figuring out our own values, missions, the way that we want to shape the world, but also marrying that with being customer centric and asking ourselves, not what do I want on the website, but what does the customer need on the website? And I love that example. You're right. We as bus riders, we don't care whatsoever about the board of directors. When's the bus going to be here? Is it running on time? And hey, can I track it? That would be a really cool feature. So I want to hear more from you about this strategy, because so many, and my argument would be too many entrepreneurs are operating without that strategy. How do you sit down and when these two are conflicting, how do we balance my desires and my messaging versus what my customers need? How do we even blend that?
Yeah, well, as an entrepreneur, you have to pick that thing that you are good at, and you have to be all in, right? Yeah, I was working for other people, and I probably should have started my business a long time ago, because I would ruffle feathers, because I'm an innovator, I'm a reformer, and I want to make things better, more efficient, optimized. And that wasn't what I was hired to do. And I was reminded of this by various bosses in various jobs. And so it was good to set aside the risk and say, I'm just going to strike out on my own. And what can I do? What can I do that I want to do, my mission, my vision, what I want to see changed in the world, how I want to help people. But then I also did a whole lot of research. So I researched what's going on here in Salem, Oregon with video, photography, web design, all the services I offer. I checked out every single website of every single competitor that I have. And I say that competitor because I know a lot of these guys because I would work with them at Chariots. So sometimes we would hire them as videographers. We got some really, really talented people here in town that I love having relationships with and learning from them. And so I don't really see them as competitors. They're good people. But I researched what they were doing, and I saw, where are the gaps? What's not happening here in Salem? And there's some people talking a little bit about humor, but nobody was really hitting it hard. And so I said, that's going to be my brand. And I also didn't see, we used to have a company here in Salem that was really, really focused on nonprofits, and they have now moved. And so I've really kind of made that my thing as well. That fit for me because that was my history. My career was working for nonprofits and government agencies, and so that's really been the biggest part of my client base. So yeah, you just kind of you got to look at the data, look at the research, spend your time figuring out where the gaps are, where the needs are, where your gifts and your services can really meet those needs in the strongest way, and then get out there and talk to people, right? I mean, networking is kind of the buzzword, I would say, but I just love getting out there and talking to people. I am not an extrovert like you, Brian, but I get out there and attend meetings and just have coffee with people, have informational interviews. And that has led to so much work. And I'm really grateful for all the clients that have taken a chance on me. I've only been in business about 8 months, and it's been really great just to get out there and meet people and hear what their stories are, hear what their needs are. Usually people will come to me and they'll say, hey, I need fill in the blank. I had a nonprofit director come to me and say, hey, my board really wants me to do a social media campaign. Can you put that together for us? And I said, let's talk. What's going on with you? And he explained, like, they started out doing this one activity, and then they saw this other need, and they expanded and they expanded and they expanded. And just like I was saying earlier, they kind of lost sight of their mission, and they were furiously writing grants just to keep up with all the different programs that they were trying to do, because their hearts were big and they wanted to help the community, but they had kind of lost sight. So instead of doing a social media campaign, I actually did a training with their board about mission, vision, and values, and about setting up a fundraising program to really stabilize their donor base, which is part of my background as well. And so it was listening to what the customer needed, my clients, and helping them. And that'll lead to other work that I will enjoy more. I would love to shoot a video for them. But really what they needed was to kind of reconfigure what they were doing and refocus on their mission.
Yeah, Steven, you just brought up some of my favorite things in the world, first of which is coffee shop conversations. So I'm already excited for the day that I'm back on the West Coast and we get to sit down in a coffee shop and just have an awesome conversation in real life together. But the second thing that you brought up is, you said it a few times, videos and videography. And obviously that is such a core component of marketing, because it allows you to tell those stories, to communicate those values, those missions, those visions that you have for your industry and for your work. And I, as somebody who loves video, you already nailed me for being an extrovert. I love being behind a camera and talking to other people and projecting my message out there. But I want you to talk to all of those entrepreneurs, and probably those entrepreneurs out there too, who are saying, Steven, video, what am I going to create a video on? How's video going to factor into my marketing?
Yeah. It really comes down to, if you are trying to explain what you do and who you are, it comes down to authenticity. And so I have this studio that I set up, and I've done a lot of training and lighting and all these things, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to have that training. Get out there with a cell phone. Those cell phone cameras are just as good as anything that we've had in the past. I'm shooting on an A7 IV, but that's not what you need to get out there. It's about your story. And so, I shoot videos for a YouTube series that I'm starting, and I have decided that one of the ways that I'm going to be authentic is by putting bloopers at the end, where I've messed up my little speech that I give. I write about marketing tips, and then I read it off the teleprompter, and I screw it up. And then I put those bloopers at the end, and that shows people I'm just a real person. I'm not this polished guy. I'm approachable, and I am available to have coffee. And that's where we have the conversations. So telling those stories about who you are, and you all know, you've had those professors or those teachers that were so passionate about a subject that you couldn't help but be passionate about it. I had an English teacher my senior year of high school, and he loved literature so much. I wasn't a huge fan at the time, but I grew to love it because I was so inspired by him, and he was hilarious. He would tell a joke, and I would sit in the front row. He would tell a joke, and the class would laugh, and then he would mutter a second joke under his breath, and then only a few of us caught that, and I loved that. But he was inspiring because he was passionate about it. And so if you are going to be successful as an entrepreneur, you got to take that step and share that passion with the world. And it's going to be contagious. It's going to be infectious. And you can do that with really simple videos. You can hold the video out and say, here's what I'm doing today. I'm excited to get there, but today I'm filing my business license with the state, or whatever, just taking people on that journey with you as you start your business. That could be its own story, to help people understand who you are and what you're doing. And then, once they see who you are, you've got that easy handshake, you've got that cup of coffee, and then you're into that opportunity to listen to what they need and take that next step with them.
Steven, I actually love that the example that you gave on the fly is I'm filing my taxes today, because that is in and of itself so boring. But to me, that's actually like totally my MO when it comes to my storytelling. Is all you just did was commentary. You didn't come up with something witty or clever. You literally shared with the world what you're doing today. And so frequently over my 15 years of being an entrepreneur, I've found that even something as simple as commentary makes people say, oh, whoa, Brian, I didn't know you had a business. Like, what exactly do you do? And you're right. It initiates those conversations. So I love commentary as a storytelling, a source of inspiration for that storytelling. Where else can we look for stories? I know that that holds so many people back.
Yeah. It just goes back to listening. I don't want to repeat myself, but a good example was at Chariots. I rode the bus, and I worked in administration. I didn't have to ride the bus, but it's nice that there's a bus stop right by my house, and it's not very far to go downtown to the office. But I rode the bus, and I hadn't been riding the bus before I got that job. In fact, I hadn't been riding the bus at all. And the day before my interview, I got on the bus and I rode it around so that when I got to my interview and they said, hey, what do you know about Chariots? What do you know about riding the bus? I said, well, I didn't know much, but I rode yesterday. And let me tell you, I sat on the bus. I rode around Route 3 all the way around, and there were 4 Arabic speakers behind me, and there were 2 Latinos and 1 African-American man, and I was the only white guy in the bus. And it was a beautiful picture of what our community is and people that I might not necessarily run into in Salem here. And I really enjoyed it. And I just kind of love being part of the community. And I felt that connection with the community just by riding the bus. And my boss's jaw just dropped, my not quite yet boss. And she told me later, that was why I got hired, is because I was just observing and paying attention and seeing the importance of transit. And I turned that into a story later, a video we shot called The Community Thread, where all we did was I wrote the story, but we followed a bus driver from him waking up, going to work, taking people to work, other people using the bus. And it was just this beautiful thing of all these different threads coming together at the end to see how the buses really connect our community. And again, community thread. And that just came from riding the bus and watching and listening to our riders. A big part of my job as running the website and doing social media, that was a big customer service channel for our riders, was to write in on Facebook. You know, I would post about a holiday closure and they would say, well, how do I get to Fred Meyer, or whatever. And I would have to know the bus system so that I could answer their question and help them. And so listening to your clients, to your customers, and seeing the simple beauty of their lives, and then seeing how your product or your service interacts with that, intersects with that, and how you improve their lives with what you're offering with your business. There's countless stories there because there's countless people, and just be listening.
Yeah, almost what I hear when you talk about this stuff is my ears are picking up. The stories almost tell themselves if your eyes are open and if your ears are listening. And I can't help but think of Seinfeld, for example. Talk about a show that it's literally, they even said it themselves, it's a show about nothing. It's the day-to-day life. And all of us see ourselves in those stories. That's the thing that I like about the way that you talk about storytelling and how you craft your strategy for businesses and brands and nonprofits, is that you don't think you need to come up with these wild stories. You're never going to show up to a party and tell the craziest story that anyone's ever heard, because the reality is our customers are going to picture themselves through the lenses of our stories. So I absolutely love that approach, Steven. Is there anything you want to add on that?
No, that's fantastic. I mean, you're absolutely right. The human struggles, the themes that resonate with us have been around for millennia. And so tapping into those and just listening and paying attention, you're absolutely right. Just telling the real authentic stories, that's what resonates with people.
Heck yeah. So I want to bridge the gap now from there to the business owners who are saying, Steven, so what are you saying? I got to record a video every day and post it on social media. How does all of this play into? We've talked about so many different things today, from strategy and your mission statement, your vision statement, to storytelling, to videos. How does this all play into a structured marketing mix that actually brings in business? Are we talking about having social media content? Are we talking about the way that we craft our messaging and positioning in real life and online? How do you view all this with your marketing hat on?
Yeah, I mean, it's about strategy again. I love helping businesses write marketing plans. Just even being intentional about your messaging and your communication is sets you apart from so many others. But it's not even just your public stuff. It's your responding to emails. We're talking about communication and marketing in general. You don't even have to have a fancy email signature. Just responding to emails and keeping open communication with people is huge and sets you apart from so many other small businesses. But just having a plan, and don't get overwhelmed. Social media is not the silver bullet. In fact, we are in a really, really evolving landscape right now. People are leaving Twitter in droves. People are joining Mastodon. People are joining Vero. People are a lot of photographers are really hating, and videographers are hating what Instagram is doing, trying to be like TikTok, because I can't tell my stories in 30 seconds sometimes. And so social media is not the solution. Set a plan. I have a calendar, an editorial calendar, where I set up what content I'm going to post and how often. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. If I'm really, really busy with clients, they come first. But shoot for twice a week, even just getting good quality content out there, because I agree with you, Brian. Commentary as storytelling is huge, but nobody wants to see a picture on Instagram of what you ate for dinner last night, right? And so telling your authentic story of who you are as a business person, as an entrepreneur, what you do, that's important stuff. But some of the fluff, I know you're not a fluff guy, Brian, so get rid of the fluff and just focus on what's important and stick to a schedule. Try and post regularly to social media, but have that plan. And always have the call to action, right? So I don't just tell stories to tell stories. I tell stories to cause people to take action. So with nonprofits, that's come volunteer with us, donate to our cause, help us spread the word. With a product or a service, it's, take that next step to get in touch with us to buy the product or to hire us for the service. Always be finishing with a call to action so that people can take that next step and get connected with you. But yeah, just be strategic about it. Come up with a plan that works for you with your skill set, your stories, and then just stick with it. And that's being strategic about it is going to set you apart from so many others.
Yeah, I hope every single one of you listeners picked up on what I picked up in Steven's last answer. And it just so happens that he said one of my 2 words for this year, which is intention. So if you're listening to this episode and you're hearing Steven talk about these intentions, think about how intentional his marketing strategy is for all of his clients. It starts with us, the business owners, the businesses themselves, the entrepreneurs behind them. Come up with your mission statement, your vision statement, your core values, and then marry those with your customers, what they're interested in, what they need to hear, what their desires are, what their fears are. You've heard Steven lay out the entire strategy behind his genius here, and that's why I definitely invite you. I'm going to open the floor in a second, Steven, for you to tell listeners about Dry Humor Marketing, because I want them to check out your work. It's so freaking cool. I love everything that you do. But before we get there, I do want to take a second, because we've picked into your zone of genius here today. But I also want to talk about you, the entrepreneur. I know that you are someone who started your business during the pandemic. It's such a tumultuous time, but you've really found the opportunities and carved those out there. And one thing that I love about your story is that you say you wish you started sooner, which is a message that I love to preach. Talk to listeners about you taking the plunge and starting your business.
Yeah, I'm a pretty risk-averse person, and so it was always just this dream that, oh, well, I could be, running my own business, but I don't really know what that would look like, and I can't do it because fill in the blank. We don't have enough money saved up, or we don't have benefits figured out, or whatever else. And I was really fortunate. My wife is a teacher and has started teaching just 3/4 time at our girls' school, and so She has been able to provide benefits for us and give us this launching pad. But like I said earlier, I found myself a really valuable member of a team wherever I worked. And then I wanted to push them further, and they just weren't interested. And for various reasons, people get comfortable, and I don't like being comfortable. And people think they have things figured out, and I don't think I ever have anything figured out. There's always more to learn. There's always more to grow, and more things to innovate and to change. And so I wasn't a great fit at any of these places that I worked. I learned a lot. They're wonderful people there. But ultimately, I just wasn't a good fit after 5 years, 3 years. And so I knew that I needed to try something different. And like I said, I was really grateful to have that government job for the bulk of the pandemic. Trace did a great job taking care of the workforce during the pandemic, and I kept my job, and I was grateful for that. But I knew as we were kind of coming out that it was time to try something new. And so, I had learned the skills there, and I had made that job more than it was. When I started, they just hired me to do social media when I started. And I said, well, what about photography? I see a camera sitting here. Did I know how to run this camera when I started? No, but YouTube is amazing, right? Everybody knows YouTube University. I highly recommend it. And then I started getting into video. And then I said, hey, this website is a big communication piece that's kind of being run by our IT department. Shouldn't we be doing that? And so I took on the website, and then I took on the internal website, and I redesigned that. And so I kept learning and kept gaining these skills that I knew would be transferable, that I could use someday in my business. And I was ready to launch. And so I wished them well and thanked them. And then in May, I launched out on my own. And I was able to I had the skills that I needed to get started. And I also had been networking for 20 years here in Salem. And so I just kind of leaned on those networks, and people trusted me. They came to me and said, we're ready to work with you right away. And I was really grateful for that. But I also learned what I shouldn't be doing. And so I realized I hate doing website maintenance and the back end, the backups, the security updates and all that. And so I have a contractor who I worked with at Chariots. He does it part-time, and we work together, and he helps me with that. And so it freed me up to focus on my clients and getting out there, networking, and then I also have figured out, like, marketing is a hard word and a hard concept for people to understand. I was part of a networking group that was supposed to have one person per business category. And I would explain, I'm Stephen Custer with Dry Humor Marketing. I do video, photography, web design, and digital marketing strategy. And that was my introduction. And yet, after a few weeks, people were referring themselves to a photographer who had come as a guest. And I was like, hey, guys, I'm a photographer. Did you miss that? Well, they had, because I hadn't communicated it well. I had focused on marketing, and I hadn't explained that I'm a content marketer and that I shoot videos and photography to help you get your business story out there. And so I've started to spin off some of these other things and other brand names. I'm starting Dry Humor Media for my photography and video, and then also Storyteller for Good for nonprofit video and storytelling, video and photography for storytelling with nonprofits, which is what I'm doing already, but it helps explain better what I'm doing. And so I'm listening to my clients. I'm kind of continuing to research and figure out what's working, what's not, and adapting as I go by starting these different brands. It's all the same company. It's just me. Don't tell anybody. But it helps people understand better what it is that I do and how I can help them.
Stephen, I love so many aspects to what you just shared with listeners. One of which is that's the first time I've heard anyone say YouTube University. I love that. That's what I'm going to start telling people when they're just like, hey, where did you learn video editing? Hey, where do you learn, website coding? Where did you learn this? YouTube University is the answer. And I hope what listeners also heard in that story that you told us is necessity is a great teacher. You didn't know all of the things when you left your comfortable government job. You didn't didn't know all the things that you'd be facing, but you've always stepped into it because necessity is the greatest teacher. So Steven, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. And the two big things that I really want listeners to take away, because you said it so many times, is about having the intention. If you're operating without a plan, then that's why we lean on people like Steven. That's why you should say to yourself, I can't just keep floating in the wind. I need to have a plan. I need to have intention behind it. And the second thread that I keep seeing pop up in all of your answers is communicating. Being good at what you do is one thing, but being able to convey what you do and why you do it and how you do it is maybe even more important than that, because if people don't know what you do, then you're never going to be able to succeed when it comes to business. So, Steven, you've been such a wealth of knowledge, which is exactly what I expected out of you today. I'd love to open the floor and let you tell listeners where they can learn about you, your businesses, where they should follow you, and where they can check out all the awesome work that you're doing.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate that. So like I said, Dry Humor Marketing is the business that I've started, dryhumormarketing.com, on all the social channels. And if you're on Vero, let me know. I'm starting to kind of dabble in that and check that out for photography. But like I said, I've also added Dry Humor Media and Storyteller for Good, still building out those channels and those websites. But if you could give me a follow and let me know what you like, what you don't like, and say hi. I'd love to get to know anybody who's been watching this.
Heck yeah. So dryhumormarketing.com is where Steven does all of his marketing brilliance. If you want to start being more intentional and you want to have a plan when it comes to your marketing, your messaging, your storytelling, then check out Steven's work at dryhumormarketing.com. And of course, you don't have to memorize all these links and business names that were thrown out at you. Check the show notes wherever you're tuning in to today's episode. And otherwise, Steven, thank you so much for joining us on the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you. It's been a great time.